Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third installment of car sketching. I thought I would spend this episode on how I set up a drawing. So if you've looked at the previous episodes, you know that I'm sketching in my car and I'm using the best classical artist I could possibly use. So I just have a simple book and I just kind of want to show you how I start a drawing, and then in a future episode I will show you that drawing as I go along. So I use the book, as I said. I also have a couple of simple clamps that I just bought on Amazon, and I clamp it to just keep everything straight and flat. And this is my little sketchbook, which I've shown you before, where I have the drawings in it. Sometimes I spread it over 2 pages, sometimes I just do a close-up. So what I do is I select the drawing that I'm interested in. Obviously I'm not going to draw this one again. Hello, wake up. Coffee hasn't kicked in yet. So I was thinking of doing this one. Mainly I'm thinking it could be a good one to do because the sizing will fit on the page really well. And a couple of tips I've picked up from other artists is that if you can draw at the same size as your reference material, it really makes a huge difference with getting your measurements right. And so right now I'm just clamping my book onto the book, my sketchbook onto the reference book, so that I don't have to, worry about it shifting and moving around. I have one item to deal with once I clamp it, which it's being difficult. So I try to clamp it where I don't think it'll obstruct the drawing. So over here there's not much happening, so I thought I would clamp it right there. And I try to make sure that the page is nice and flat. And then I take my trusty pencil case, which I absolutely love. Again, I got this at Home Goods, and there's the brand if you're interested. Made in Italy, where all awesome things are made. Anyway, I love having all my stuff in one place. And if you want to peek in here to see what my tools are, I just have various great, pencils to draw with, good artist pencils, also some cheap office pencils just for some quick things. I have my kneaded eraser, which is really important, and that's, a basic tool that I think every person who's drawing in pencil should have. But speaking of measurements, which is so important, this is a great tool, and I got this from Garrett Wade. You don't have to get one this fancy. You can just grab a ruler, or in fact, you can even take basic measurements using your pencil. So in other words, your basic measurement from the head to the foot. I could use my nail here, my finger, to note that the bottom of the toe hits here and the top of the head hits here. And then I just bring my pencil over to the paper and I go, okay, so here's one measurement at the bottom and here's where the head should be, and I just make a couple of marks. So real simple way to do it. Or you can use this nifty little tool which can take a pretty precise mark on your drawing. Now it's not a big tool, so it's only good for small sketches, but since I'm using a very small sketchbook, it works great. So I'll take basic measurements of head to toe and go, okay, I'm going to move this down. So I'm going to go from head to toe. And another thing I do sometimes is just kind of rough out about where the head would be, and then I get a basic measurement about how big the head is. So I'm going from top of the head to the bottom of the jawline. And when I'm doing this, I like to actually think of the area. I wouldn't be saying it out loud if YouTube people weren't watching, but I do like to say, okay, top of head to jaw, because you'd be surprised how hard it is to keep track of where your measurement was, because another great measurement might be to his, I think it's called a clavicle area here. So that would be a slightly bigger measurement, and I'd go, okay, top of head to the clavicle, which is right here, and I would kind of jot that in. So that's how I basically do that. And then I grab some other key points. So on this drawing, I think from muscle to shoulder muscle might be a great one. And I look at the proportion of where the head is in relation to my tools. So you see there's less room here and more room here. Seems like a silly thing, but you could place that head in the wrong position very easily if you don't do that. So here I'm pushing it over closer here, so you have less room here and more room here. Now before you think, oh my god, this looks like a drag, I hate measuring things, I don't like numbers, I mean, you're speaking my language right now, but I can tell you that it will save you so much grief if you start this way. So I'm also starting with a 2B pencil, which I don't recommend. I'm going to switch over now to a lighter pencil because although it's great to have a dark pencil for filming, it's really better if you use, an HB or an F or even a 2H when you start, because then your lines aren't really, filled with commitment and you can kind of change them around. I'm also looking at the angle too. If you notice that this shoulder is much higher than the other shoulder. So when I took a look at that just now, I realized, wow, this really should be lower. So I'm going to drop this shoulder down and move it like this. So I'll get my handy dandy my handy dandy eraser and get rid of that. And you'll see that I still kept it in line with my other measurement, but I've dropped his shoulder down. And just that couple of points will make, a really huge difference in how you can capture, your drawing in a correct way right from the beginning, as opposed to getting really far into the details and then going, I'm way off. So I'm going to take another quick measurement here from the clavicle to where his chest kind of comes up in that upside down V. And I'm going to grab that and go, okay, well, it was pretty much where I should have been. A lot of times it's just to see how close I am. A lot of times my measurements by eye are fine, and it's really just to, give me the confidence that, yeah, I'm on board. This is exactly where I should be. A lot of times I didn't need to measure it, but I, double check it. So I definitely recommend that a little bit more when you're first starting out, and especially with figure drawing. I think when you're drawing other things, other things in nature, it's not as critical because your eye really picks up on incorrect measurements in a figure. We've seen figures so much that we know when something's off. So again, I'm just picking up like from his armpit to, again, that area there where his chest meets in a V. And I'm going to keep these measurements really loose or really light and kind of scratchy because I typically change them a lot as I go along. And I realize, wow, that's a little bit off, and I move it along and make my adjustments. So while I have a minute here and I'm sort of in my head drawing, I'd appreciate if you could like this channel and hit the subscribe button so I know that somebody's out there watching. And then you'll, if you also hit the button that has the little bell on it, it'll give you an alert whenever I post a new video. So you'll see right now I've kind of just gone along here without measuring, but now is probably a good time to check. I'm going to go from the clavicle to where his belly sort of disappears behind his leg. So if you look here, for some reason I'm having a tricky time measuring that. So if you look here from the clavicle to where it disappears in the leg, I'm just going to see that I'm a little off. I mean, I thought it was way down here, and it's not. So I'm going to grab that measurement because clearly I am way off, and I want to just force myself to really, change that and fix what I've done there, because that's going to make him look way out of proportion, a mistake like that. And I'm also going to go from about where it dents in here to the end of his knee. So from about where it dents in to the end of his knee, and I'm trying to get the angle. You see how the angle's like this and not like that? So I'm also at the same time trying to get the angle there. So it's, again, where it bends in, not here, but where it bends in to the end of the knee. So where it bends in to the end of the knee is at about that angle. And you know, if it's not perfect, hopefully I'll pick it up later and I'll figure that out. And so here's the sweeping line here. And you know, I may perfect all this later, but it'll give you an idea of where it should be. So, and then a general thickness. Sometimes, you know, getting a thickness measurement is so important because, again, apologies for the lighting in my car. I'm doing this before I go into work in the morning. It's really the only stretch of time I have to stay committed to getting some content up on a more regular basis. So the lighting in here, not so great. Hopefully you get enough out of it. So here's the thickness that I was measuring, and I think it's, you know, super important to get that so you don't end up with like a Hulk leg and something that just looks bizarre on the page. So right here I'm getting this line right here, and I feel like it's about there, and then the back area of his butt would be somewhat like this. And now it's time to check again, like how am I doing with my measurements? Are they in the right place? It seems like this might be a little bit off now. So I'm going to start making some corrections here. And it might be that my shoulder isn't high enough. So I'm just because it was my first line on the page doesn't make it right. In fact, it almost always means that it's wrong. So I'm watching people walk by as I'm doing this in my car. I'm always wondering when it's going to happen that I'm going to get somebody saying, hey, what are you doing? Hopefully it won't be security. Anyway, so from the armpit to this second dent, this would be the first dent, this would be the second dent, just so I can, you know, get my mind around where I am. So from the armpit to the second dent is right about here. So I could sense that I was getting a little bit too long. So that's helpful to get that in there. And I'm drawing at a really awkward angle in the car, so my lines aren't looking that great, but that's okay. This is early on. I'm also going to throw in a little bit of early shading too, just to give me, you know, some sense of volume right away. It helps keep me interested in the drawing, because if I don't, and the drawing looks flat, I feel like, wow, it's not a drawing I want to go back to. But if I have some line work in there to show some volume, I really feel, you know, a lot more interested in the drawing. You see here where I'm really shading this whole area. I'm looking at it like, oh, this whole area is so much darker than this. So I'm just going to throw that in there right away without getting too specific about, you know, where the, you know, where it gets maybe a little darker and a little lighter. I'll worry about that later. Boy, I'd like to have this guy's abs, no kidding. Jeez, if I didn't eat for 5 weeks, I would never have this flat a belly. But anyway, Michelangelo really liked his good-looking dudes. So I appreciate that. It's nice to look at a nice trim model. Anyway, so here we go. So I'm looking at this going, wow, from here to here, it looks like maybe this butt should jut out a little more. So I'm going to double check that measurement and go from belly button to end of butt. Belly button to end of butt. Yep, and my gut was correct that it really wasn't out enough. I need to really have him twerk a little more. So here he is. And because I don't want to trick myself later, I'm going to get rid of that so I don't think that it's a value call out. And I'm going to now put in a little shading here just so I can, as I said, start to see the volume. I'm starting to sense that this is too thick, so I'm going to take a quick measurement here at this part of the leg and just make sure I'm not getting too crazy with the thickness here. And as I kind of suspected, and my gut was telling me, that leg really needs to move up like this. And I'm always shocked at how far this cuts into the knee when it's bent. It's almost to the end. If you look here, it's just so tiny. So don't be afraid to do that, and don't be afraid to adjust it. Again, your earlier lines are going to be the most untrustworthy because you don't have anything to measure it against. And this is trying to look like a severe man boob, which I'm going to have to fix later. But again, I'm throwing in some shading here. So I'm just going to be quiet for a sec. You're probably thinking, thank God, oh my God, that Rhode Island accent, atrocious. Would love your comments too. Is it helpful to hear what I'm thinking, or would you rather just watch, watch what's happening? Well, the other option is too, do you want some music in the background? I could even look at doing that. Just always a little leery about doing that, since you have to get ownership rights on the music or face copyright issues if at some point I end up with a bigger following and people actually pay attention to what I'm doing here. So I don't want to keep this video, I don't want this video to be too long, but I just want to kind of get down to this measurement. And you see here that this leg is not really on track to grab his toe in the right place. So I'm going to take another measurement here and go from the toe to the knee and kind of correct where I was. So I'm thinking it's more like this. And I'm gonna grab this and really just get this basic measurement down before I call it quits and then finish this on another day, so I can keep the length of this short enough for short attention spans, and also so that it'll load properly, which is always a trick with YouTube. So anyway, there's the basic area where, oh my God, sorry, the music kicked on. It scared the heck out of me. So there's a basic measurement about where the foot would end. And again, throwing in just a little bit of shading there to remind me when I come back to this drawing that, that's going to be a darker value. And, I'll talk more about values too later. And I got to say that I learned that a little bit late in my drawing career, and I wish I had paid more attention to my teachers at RISD when they talked about how important it was to get the value right. And Mark Carter is, just a great influence. He's a great YouTube painter, and I've learned so much from that guy. You should check out his YouTube channel if you want to learn how to paint, or even just the basics of seeing when you're doing your artwork. Just incredible artist, incredible teacher. Just, if there's something that he's better at than painting, is maybe his teaching skills. So anyway, he's the one that really called my attention to, you almost can paint with any color if your values are correct. And he shows that. I never would have believed it, but it's true. And I feel like too that if your values are correct in a drawing, you can be a little off in the proportions and be okay. At this point, I'm not really using my measuring tool anymore, except maybe when I get out here where this measurement's going to get, pretty tricky. I mean, that's quite a wingspan. So I'll then pull this out to, get that. But at this point, I'm going to start drawing my measurements in relation to what I already have on the page. At some point, you've got to kind of trust what you have and not get so frozen in, the checking portion of the drawing, and really just start to flow with it, or it's going to look too tight and just not, it's just not going to end up good. It might be anatomically correct, but it's going to look very stiff. So at some point you do have to kind of bail on your tools and just move forward and just start drawing based on trusting your main measurements there. So I think that's about it for now. I'll get this up, and then for car sketching episode 3, I'll hope to finish this drawing or get damn near close. So thanks for watching, and as I always do, see you later.